Welcome back. You're watching Fox and Friends First. 2020 Democrats pin the blame on President Trump for the El Paso massacre.
Donald Trump is responsible for this.
White nationalism is condoned at the highest levels of our government.
Doesn't just tolerate it, he encourages it.
There is a consequence to the words that the President of the United States speaks.
There are mentally unstable people in this country who see that as a sign to do terrible, terrible things.
But is this really the appropriate time to push their political message? Here to debate, New York City Councilman Joe Borelli and former Obama administration appointee Stephen Cobb. Thank you both for joining us.
Morning. Thanks for having us.
So, Stephen, I'll begin with you. Is this appropriate at this time?
Well, telling the truth is always appropriate. And what we want to make sure is that this is condemned at every level of government from people across the aisle. This really shouldn't be a partisan issue. This is a public safety issue. But when the administration kind of is mealy-mouthed about condemning white nationalism, we need to call that out for what it is. And this isn't a new thing. This goes back all the way to Charlottesville in my home state of Virginia, where the president was mushy when condemning the white supremacist actions there, when David Duke said they were there to fulfill the promise of President Trump.
He did condemn David Duke, though. He did condemn David Duke. And this does go back, you're right, it goes back to previous administrations, not just the President Trump's administration. Let's be fair and then show what President Trump did say in regards to the shooting.
I just want to say that these are two incredible places. We love the people. Hate has no place in our country. And we're going to take care of it.
You know, Joe, we expect to hear more from the president today on these two shootings. What do we need to hear from him? And also, do you think it's fair that it's already being politicized?
Look, you know, you did hear the president condemn the shooter, as he should, both shooters in both incidents. You should hear the president try to be the leader of conveying the national sympathies and the national concern over these issues, which seem to combine guns with mental health. What you shouldn't hear is what you do hear from all of the 2020 Democrats. They are wrong for blaming President Trump as a person for this shooting, just like it would have been wrong to blame the Dayton shooter on Elizabeth Warren because there's some evidence that he was a supporter of hers. Just like it'd be wrong to blame the Steve Scalise shooter on Bernie Sanders, and it's wrong to blame the Obama foreign policy on Omar Mateen, who shot up Pulse nightclub. These are people who have real problems, and it's sad to see Democrats scoring political points and trying to run up the score for 2020.
Stephen, your response to that?
Well, I mean, I think it should be condemned across the aisle. I do hope the president takes the time today to come out and condemn those who would take his words as motivation to come out and commit such heinous acts. And that when you look at someone who allegedly has a manifesto that parrots the president's word back as his own motivation, what the president should do is take it to the next level and say, no one should take anything I say as a motivation to commit violence. You know, that should be the message. And so I guess we'll see whether or not the president shows that kind of leadership later today.
Right. How does it help, though, and I'll just stay with you, Stephen, for just a moment. How does it help to continually call the president a racist? How does that help the situation?
I think we're you know, calling a spade in this instance. When what we're talking about, there's one study done, I think it was in University of North Texas, that talked about in places where the president had gone and done a campaign rally was over 200% more likely to have a hate crime than a locality that hasn't. So there's a correlation there that is, you know, worthy of attention and concern.
Mm-hmm. You know, Heather, Democrats are just fast and loose with these allegations of racism and stuff like that. I'll give you a great example. Bill de Blasio here blamed the far right for a rise in anti-Semitic hate crimes. Those hate crimes were happening in central Brooklyn, the one place on earth where there probably isn't a Republican within miles. You see Democrats all over this country trying to use these opportunities as moments of advancing an agenda and trying to advance a narrative. And when it doesn't fit the case, like in the case with the Dayton shooter, you don't hear hear much.
Mm-hmm. You know,
The president has no problem and spends more time focusing on freshman members of Congress than he does a rise in extremism and shooters and white nationalism. That should tell you all you need to know.
Yeah, we'll see what he says today. We do know in the manifesto, allegedly from the first shooter, he did say in that he had these feelings prior to the Trump administration. And we know that the second shooter, as you said, Joe, was linked possibly to Elizabeth Warren. But we're talking about this, and there's still so much more to come out. Joe and Stephen, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.